Imagine for a second that we could map every single atom in our brains, every electrical spark, every chemical drop. Would that map be you? Or is there a ghost in the machine? Today we're diving into the mind-body problem using a few key philosophers in our argument. How does this project shed light on a specific topic? By visualizing these abstract theories, we aren't just reading about logic, we're looking at the clash between the internal world of feeling and the external world of science. We're asking, is consciousness a biological byproduct or a fundamental part of the universe? To understand this famous problem, we need to learn about the two parties involved. On one side, there's the physicalists. This side views the mind and the body are not two separate things, but something more literal. The mind is the brain, every thought, every memory, and every emotion is just a specific pattern of physical interactions. They view the mind-body connection as a literal biological bridge in between each other. The mind is simply the result of neurons firing, chemical signals crossing, and electrical impulses traveling throughout brain tissue. Some of the main philosophers a part of this party are David Papineau and Patricia Churchland. David Papineau was born in Como, Italy, 1947. He would travel around Europe with his family when he was young age, going to school all the way from London to South Africa. He would then return to England to study philosophy at Cambridge. David argues that modern science suggests that every physical effect, such as moving your arm, can be fully explained by a prior physical cause, such as neurons firing and muscles contracting. Papineau argues if you were to deny physicalism, you would have to believe that the laws of physics are broken every time you have a thought that lends to an action. As for Patricia Churchland, our second key figure, she was born in Oliver, British Columbia, 1943. She is well known for her contributions towards neuroscience, philosophy of the mind, and neuroethics. Churchland's argument is much more aggressive than Papineau's. While Papineau focuses on physics, Churchland focuses on neuroscience. Patricia Churchland argues that our current vocabulary for the mind is like a pre-scientific myth. She believes that one day we won't say, I'm feeling sad or I'm hungry. She'll say, we'll describe the specific firing pattern in our neurotransmitters. To her, the brain isn't just connected to the mind, the brain is the mind. First of all, I just want to say, can you imagine saying your specific firing patterns of neurons instead of saying I'm sad? I don't ever want to get that advanced in time where that is considered the normal. Talking like that would make us sound like robots and animatronics. Now that we've discussed our physicalist party and their beliefs, I think it's time to get to know the dualists. The dualists argue that the mind and body are fundamentally different, even if you have a perfectly functioning brain that doesn't fully explain the experience of being alive. Dualists believe that there is a gap between the brain and the mind. You can describe the physics of a sunset, the wavelengths of that light, but the description doesn't contain the beauty or the feeling of seeing it, or the specific qualia that you feel when experiencing that sunset. The mind must be something non-physical or a separate property. One of the main philosophers for the dualist party is David Chalmers. Chalmers was born in Sydney, Australia, 1966. He would later obtain his PhD in 1993 in philosophy and cognitive science. David Chalmers is the leading voice for modern dualism. Unlike older philosophers who argued for a soul, Chalmers used logic and thought experiments to prove that consciousness cannot be fully explained by physical parts alone. Chalmers would present a very interesting dilemma, that dilemma being the easy and hard problems. Chalmers argues that philosophers like Churchland and Papineau are only solving the easy problems. The easy problem being how the brain integrates information, reacts to stimuli, or controls behavior. These are easy because we can see the physical mechanics doing the work. However, for the hard problem, it involves explaining why all the physical processing feels like something. Why do we have an internal movie playing in our heads? Why doesn't the brain just process that data in the dark? Why do colors feel alive? One of Chalmers' more famous argument is his philosophical zombie argument. This thought experiment involves zombies, not the flesh-eating kind, but a creature that is physically identical to you, atom for atom, down to the very last neuron. This zombie acts like you, talks like you, and processes light exactly like you. However, this zombie has no internal experiences. It's dark on the inside. There is no feelings of the sun on its skin, or if it were to taste chocolate. It has no qualia. The whole point of this thought experiment is if we can imagine a world where physics exists, but the feeling doesn't, then the feeling or consciousness must be something extra. It isn't just a byproduct of physics. Chalmers argues that even if you have a perfect map of the brain, you'd still be missing the most important part, and that experience is you yourself, the qualia of being you. To him, consciousness is just a fundamental ingredient of the universe, not a result of neurons firing or brain wiring. Question 2. Did you change your mind on a topic? If so, how and why? Initially, I was leaning more towards the physicalist side. I thought we were just biological computers once we map the neurons and figure out the mystery's over. That's what Churchland and Papineau would argue for, and the whole thing just feels very scientific. However, looking into Chalmers' argument made my whole perspective on the situation flip. I realized that knowing how a brain processing a wavelength of light can be described, but it's completely different from actually experiencing the color of that light. I realized that the data and feeling are two different categories. I now believe consciousness might be a fundamental property that science can't solve just by looking at anatomy. Question 3. What did you learn about the topic in creating this project? I learned that you can have a perfect physical description of the brain like Papineau and Churchland, but still have no explanation for why red looks like red or why pain hurts. This is what Chalmers calls the hard problem. I learned that knowing the wiring isn't the same as knowing the experience. I also learned that being a physicalist like Papineau would require a huge leap of faith in the completeness of physics, while being a dualist like Chalmers only requires us to accept that there are big parts of the universe that science might never be able to touch. And the biggest takeaway of all, we're just walking mysteries, even to ourselves. That's enough about the perspective of famous philosophers. Instead, let's dive into interviews with your regular people, the voices of Stillwater. May you state your name, please?
My name is Zachary Follett.
Okay, Zach, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, but first, I want to ask you, are you a dualist or are you a physicalist?
Well, I would say that within any two-sided argument, there will always be a middle ground because on one end, you have a group of people saying that the mind and the body are just a group of neurons firing and there's nothing more to a person than that. While the other group is saying that you are yourself just because you are, right? That is just kind of how it is. But in a sense of life and how people work, there will always be someone who says, I believe both things. I believe someone can be the kind of person they are while still believing in the scientific aspect. I realistically don't even know still what really to say
Yeah, it's
because
hard it's hard.
I'm trying to like figure out if I'm on a side because one they're both really far extremes of like I could just believe one thing. So physicalists, your mind and your body are connected, or
Like
are they not?
they are connected. Physicalists, the mind is just it's just the
A
result of
voice.
neurons firing.
Yeah, so like myself and I am is nothing more than the product of neurons firing.
Yes, you
Okay.
if you were a physicalist, you would believe that your thoughts and everything that you are, like as crazy as it sounds, like you're a robot, right?
Basically.
You have no personality. The
The
only
only
reason
the
that's
only difference the only reason anybody is different from one another is the way those neurons fire.
essentially. And
Okay.
then like that makes you start thinking about like how do you think a psychopath thinks
Yeah,
or
exactly.
like how like other there's other cases how those people think, but if you were a dualist,
They would believe that they are not that.
they are not that. They believe that
They
there's
believe that my mind is me, right? And my body is my body that I
yes
control.
like there's something
That I'm a
bigger.
dualist. Then I truly believe that I'm a dualist, and beyond the fact of like physicalists. Like, if a physicalist were to come up to me and say, "Well, how do you know that your mind what's controlling you, like how do you know that you are controlling your actions?" And it's like, because I just do, right?
Right.
Because I am me, right? I am not a puppet, right? I'm not a passenger in my own body. I'm physically making the decisions that alter my life completely.
Okay, so let's introduce the main person for the duelist party since you're more of a duelist, if you consider yourself more of a duelist. Okay, his name is David Chalmers. Okay, he has these very like unique thought experiments, and essentially what a thought experiment is like if you had no body, if you had no skin, you had nothing, right? You're just this like cloud of consciousness. Would you still be able to like feel pain if you can imagine pain? Like if you see a video of someone getting stung by a bee.
Have I felt pain before in this hypothetical situation where I'm a ball of nothing but thought, right? Where my consciousness remains. Have I felt pain in this state before?
For this situation, I would say yes. You felt pain before.
I have felt pain before.
Yes.
I would say the physical act of me feeling the pain, you cannot replicate a pain response without nerves,
Uh-huh.
right? Your body contains those nerves. If you and your brain like collects that signal, that like response, and it sends it not to your, well, the pain response is collected by your nerves and it's sent to your brain for a reaction, right? Nowhere in that process does your mind come in and like reinforce or confirm that, because it skips that part, right? The only thing that you think in your mind is ow, right? That hurt,
Yeah.
right? Not that is going to hurt, right? Yeah, you can, if you have already been hurt by something before, right? Your mind knows, right? Because your mind is a part of you, right? Your mind does not necessarily know what pain feels like, but it remembers that it did not feel good. It associates a negative connotation with the word
Yeah.
or the feeling, right?
Okay.
But it in and of itself did not feel the pain.
So
So
you would you still be able to feel that pain, right?
if I saw a video of a guy getting stung by a bee and I'm a nothing ball and I had felt this feeling before, I'm sure I could imagine
Hmm.
it, but I wouldn't be able to feel it on my body, or I wouldn't be able to tantalize like an image. Or I could probably think of an image, right, of the bee stinging me, right? The face I might have made when it stung me. But beyond that, I don't think the brain could, or the mind, right? The mind could process that, because that's not its job,
Right.
right?
Okay.
My okay.
No, so you're essentially saying you can imagine what the pain would feel like, but without the nerves and the actual physical body, you would not be able to physically feel that pain, but yet you could still infer on what it might feel like.
Yes,
Like oh man, that would have
that
hurt.
probably hurt.
Yeah, okay.
And if I had felt that pain before, I would know that it hurt. Right? That's just how kind of how your mind works. It's kind of like seeing a red hot like stovetop and touching it once, and then the next time you don't do it because you know that it hurt.
Right. And what was that word again? It's like you retain a certain aspect from that situation. Like you know from touching that hot stove, like, oh my gosh, that was hot. So you're definitely not gonna touch it again.
Are you looking for like a word to use?
Yeah.
Like the easiest one that comes to mind is a memory, right?
Oh right.
But
Yeah. Of
it
course.
it could be like if you wanted to go for like kind of like a basic term, it could be like a consequence, right? You touched it, pain was the consequence, and your mind remembers that. It's kind of like getting spanked by your parents.
Yeah. You do
Getting spanked is the consequence, and you don't do it anymore because it hurt.
from the results of your actions.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that was pretty good. That was a good